FBI/CIA agents of Reddit, what's something that you can tell us without killing us? I worked with the Australian Federal Police with the Spider Squad doing computer stuff for them in regards to pedos and finding trafficking victims. It is the most heartbreaking work, but when you get them, the office looked like NASA after a Mars landing edit. Left 3 and bit years ago, but do get called up to lend a head every now and then. Of course, they have something called Spider Squad in Australia. Geez. I was an analyst, not an agent, officer. 85% of all classified material is classified because of how it was collected, not because it is juicy, useful. Yes, your boss and co-workers said that crap about you. I heard, just 2 days ago, that there is a saying in the government, no one ever got fired for classifying a document. Hence there is huge excess secrecy. This is just a matter of better safe than sorry. Usually it is initially classified by the first party to touch it, usually a lower-ranked individual. The easiest thing to do as the lower rank is to pass the buck. It will be up to the upper ranks to lower classification if necessary. Yours is the most believable comment in this thread. Yeah. That means 15% of all classified material is juicy. So hit us with the juice, CIA/FBI person. My dad worked for GCHQ in the 80s doing voice recognition, and he can't say anything more for a decade more. The way they can recognize you by Siri/Google today was being used in the 80s. Just a bit slower. Somewhat unrelated, but my great-uncle was an FBI agent. Every time we would ask him if he had any interesting stories, but he would say he was sworn to secrecy. After 10 years of hearing this, my sister asked, "Really?" And he responded with, "No, I just don't remember anything interesting happening." My high school girlfriend worked for the National Reconnaissance Office after college. At the time, they were responsible for analyzing the nation's spy satellite photos. She told me 2 things. There's a special garbage chute for classified materials. It's in the hallway. When you are new, as a hazing ritual, they tell you have to shout your badge number down the chute before throwing in any materials. This is hilarious. She wouldn't tell me anything about the resolution quality of the spy photos, of course, but she did let it slip that because Russian sailors will sunbathe nude on the decks of their submarines in the Black Sea, several women in the office would pin those photos up in their cubicles as cheesecake beefcake photos. So a few decades ago, US spy photos could resolve Russian penis. Edit, credit/user seditious3. Reddit link. Did they crunch the numbers to better understand size of the Russian cocks? The min, max, and potential for growth. Mr. President, we must not allow a cockshaft gap. No, but during the 80s we shipped condoms to Russia that were large size but labeled medium to F with them. Web link. This is the kind of petty I am glad for taxpayer money to be allocated for. If a 60s era SR-71 could read a golf ball while hauling ass at 80,000 feet, I believe a satellite can take photos of a Russian seaman. Impressive as hell, but to be fair, Leo starts at 525k feet and goes over 3 million feet, so we're in a whole different ball game. I was told the military gave NASA an old camera they weren't using anymore. It outclassed the Hubble by leaps and bounds, but the problem was getting it into space. I believe that was the NRO, not the military. Edit, apparently, the NRO is part of the DoD. And they actually made NASA agree to never turn it towards the Earth, because even though it was too old for them, it was still way better quality than what they were willing to admit having. Not an FBI or CIA officer here, but my sister is a district attorney, and over the years, she has prosecuted a number of animal cruelty cases. This led to her having an ongoing partnership with the FBI for the last several years. It turns out the FBI started tracking animal abuse cases about 10 to 15 years ago due to the incredibly high correlation between abusing animals when you're young and becoming a serial violent offender as an adult. Netflix getting in on that too about a year ago. Met an old, retired, CIA spook at a wedding reception. Spitting image of Colonel Sanders, he was amazing. So I asked him, I don't want you to tell me anything you can't, but I'd love to know, when Kennedy got killed, what was the talk around the water cooler in the office? He didn't halt, or pause to think. Hell, we all thought Johnson did it. Johnson really did want to be president. Plot twist, it wasn't LBJ but rather Lady Bird Johnson that wanted him dead. Hank Hill's voice, damn it Lady Bird. I also think Johnson was involved after reading the book Bloody Treason by Noel Tynan. However, just to contradict myself, the book Case Closed by Gerald Posner makes a very compelling case it was just Lee Harvey Oswald. My old man had a Yankee white clearance and he said the same thing about Johnson. I bought a Yankee candle once and I think the same. We are all told never to use sites like this, and social media in general is pretty much a no-go. I'm telling. You'll kill us all. Not if we don't comment. What if you've already heavily used them before applying? Do you get denied? I think it would. Most people that work in the sector are definitely the private type for a reason. To be honest, it's not what most people think it is. The CIA is 90%, lawyers, and the FBI is 90%, accountants. Lol, you dorks. Oh, you are on a list now. Name checks out. My dad worked for the government, and he told me that any time he had a meaningful interaction with someone who wasn't American, i.e. going over to my friend's house for Lunar New Year, or going on vacation to Canada, he had to report it all, and if he saw anything suspicious. Yep. Went through a clearance upgrade and got asked about a couple of people that I know through friends who I didn't include on my paperwork and if I knew their background. It's the nature of how they process the contacts you listed. They pretty much know that you aren't going to include people who don't like you and will tell your dirt. So they go to your old house and knock on doors to find people you didn't list on your ECUP SF86. I said 182, that's a training form and one I just had to fill out last week, so apparently that number was on my mind. The form you fill out with your life history. They say, do you know Derpy Fox? They ask that person questions like, would you trust Derpy Fox to hold a position of trust? They end with something like, do you know anyone else Derpy Fox was friends with when he or she lived here? They then repeat the process with that person to find the guy who will say something like, Derpy Fox? Yeah, I know them. They smoked so much weed in high school I used to get a contact high sitting next to them in bio class. Oh wait, you didn't report that drug use on your SF 182. Clearance denied. The deal is, if you stole a pack of gum when you were 5, this is an exaggeration, it wouldn't be reportable based on the time frame, just report it. As soon as they uncover something you didn't report, your integrity comes into question and you probably won't get that clearance. Source: went into the Marines at age 19 and have worked for the DoD in some capacity ever since, 23 years and counting. So much this. I was no angel as a youth, but fully disclosing my youthful indiscretions went a very long way in my favor during the process. I was so glad when the question changed from, have you ever been convicted or accused of a drug or alcohol-related crime? To have you been convicted or accused of a drug or alcohol-related crime in the last 7 or 10 can't remember exact details? I could stop explaining, in depth, the minor in possession of alcohol crap that happened when I was 16 years old and decided to have a beer in a parking lot of a HS football game at the exact time an undercover cop was walking to his car. Aw man, I felt that. Lol. I'm picturing meeting your dad in a bar or something. Hiya. I'm /thingy, from Australia. What you drinking there? Dad pulls out walkie-talkie, we got a 10 to 15, I repeat, a 10 to 15. If they have to document every time an Aussie drinks, they're going to need a lot more manpower. If you go through the FBI interview process, it takes a while. Chances are you're going to have to spend some time working on crimes against children, which is really tough and most people don't want to do it. Yeah, I heard a story here on Reddit about how somebody was involved in a case against a predator, and he had to go through every image on his hard drive to flag anything that was child porn. That case drove him out of the industry. I can't even imagine. I read an article once about how the government has people whose job it is to look at disturbing videos/images from the internet and seized hard drives, mainly child porn but also things like executions, to find clues to the location, identity of the people involved, etc. It's an important job, but the burnout rate is astronomical. A lot of them end up with PTSD, addiction issues, and other problems. As I said, I can't even imagine. Alcoholism would be nearly guaranteed if that was my job. Seeing things like that changes you. Similar experience for me. I used to work for CPS and one case drove me to quit. I had a client who was a sexual predator and extremely narcissistic. He literally stated that he felt other humans were ants relative to him. He sexually abused his sister and had a rape conviction for which he served 2 years. When I got the file, he had started a pattern of starting relationships with single mothers of girls. He sought mentally delayed mothers and repeatedly, we suspected but could never prove, abused their daughters. It was maddening because it felt like such a huge failing that I could never get the smoking gun. Repeatedly I got court orders to ensure no contact with various kids. He responded by finding another vulnerable single mother of a daughter. Eventually he got one of said mothers pregnant. I got his parental rights to that child revoked. One day I was doing a wellness check on his mother and I found her crying in the kitchen of her home. Her adult son, this predator, had raped her. I went on a mental health leave and upon my return 6 months later, I quit. Some people are just not wired right. It's scary what people with issues like that are capable of. I don't even want to think about how many individuals are damaged because of that one person, if you can even call him that. Years later, in an odd variation of fate, I became a co-worker with the grandmother of one of the girls this guy at least attempted to molest. She actually thanked me for how hard I worked to keep her daughter and granddaughter safe. I burst into tears at that moment. This client was a real losing my religion moment for me, so to speak. I am not religious. The story gets worse. This guy had threatened to kill me, which was actually par for the course for this job, and I bumped into him in public, at the hospital, with my wife. She was going into labor with our second daughter. He was the last person I wanted to see then. I now work in emergency mental health and I much prefer it. I am happy at work again and in better shape than most 20-year-olds at age 50. This guy was a major cause of a lot of mental health trauma for me and I'd lost my ability to care for myself mentally for a while. Having a 6-year-old girl that you know he's abused react to you in fear and not tell you, only later to find out that he'd threatened to kill her mother and pull her teeth out with pliers, well, it's bad for your mental health. You know it's bad when emergency mental health is the non-stressful option. Thank you for the work you did. Not all heroes wear capes. Thanks. Actually, relative to that crisis, mental health is a breeze. The clients I have now actually want my help. It's a more specific set of skills that I use and I feel very confident in them. I don't have a caseload hanging over me. It is odd on the face of it, but I love my current role. Edit, spelling error. Thanks for doing your best to make this a better world. I worked for the largest web hosting company on a planet at the time, and we had a guy whose job it was to answer these kinds of requests, go into databases for our customers, and give child porn information to the FBI to kick off investigations. He had the hardest job I have ever known. I used to work for a CDN, and part of my job was taking in reports of CP, verifying it, and forwarding it on to our FBI contacts. I lasted 6 months. And only because my wife and child would have starved otherwise. That was over a decade ago, still has me effed up. There are some effed up people in this world and they do some pretty effed up things. In my college years, I installed cable for Comcast. Saw some crafty things in people's homes. Called CPS more than a couple times. Edit. CPS as in Child Protective Services. As a prior CPS worker, thank you for calling. So many folks just pretend they don't see anything, or don't want to upset the family. So many mandated reporters are afraid to file with CPS. That's against the law, but I've seen teachers/school staff and mental health professionals not file. It doesn't hurt to file. You can even call and ask in a what-if manner, what if a parent was doing this, without giving info to see if you should file. You can remain anonymous. Please. Let CPS investigate if you have concerns. Edited to change CP to CPS. Adding an edit to those who could benefit from reading more about disclosure of confidential child abuse and neglect records. The PDF is informative. Web link. The interchanging of CP to mean both child porn and child protection in this thread is disturbing. Yum. I didn't even think child porn. I'm going to edit to CPS. Yeah. I used to do computer repair around the same time. Saw lots and lots of things nobody should. WTF do people take pictures of themselves doing those things? Stop it. To be honest, at least if they take pictures, there's a higher chance they will get caught and sentenced. So what you want is for them to stop doing it, abusing children, altogether, but if they don't, hope that they do take pictures, and that they're careless and get caught soon after. There is a book called Moscow Rules. It was written by 2 CIA people, all about, well, disguise. The CIA had all these agents in Russia, but the Russians were insane about following literally every single American in Russia, 24/7, looking for spies. So a huge part of their job was trying to shake off the KGB. They had crazy quick change disguises, all sorts of stuff. The movie Argo was based on one of the writers somewhat. I negotiated huge deals with the Russian government. I was tailed 24/7. One time I didn't like the room the hotel gave me. I knew it faced the noisy side because I stayed there all the time, and instead of just giving me a new room, it was a 90-minute wait while they bugged a new room for me. Twice I had bizarro run-ins with very pushy, very hot women who allegedly wanted to F me so bad. Even if I was straight, hot in Russia is a mix between a Bratz doll and a hooker, so no thanks. Edit spelling. Same in China. You only go with blank phones, and every now and then, your phone will do this little glitch as if it's being accessed. That's because it probably is. Web link. An ex-company man once told me Get Smart was more accurate than James Bond. Pretty sure being a famous spy is a sign things aren't going well. I watched the Daniel Craig Bond films recently, and that's what stood out to me, just how many people, especially terrorists, knew Bond by name and appearance. Doesn't speak well for the 00 program. That's because 007 isn't a spy. He's an assassin and a troublemaker. He kills people and F's crap up. Yeah, 007 isn't there to do recon. License to kill, that's it. I saw a post the other day, can't remember if it was here or on Twitter, about how awful a spy Bond actually is, when you think about it. Falls for damn near every honeypot, tells people his code name constantly. I can see the value of having a crap glue agent. His job is to find the folks who are trying to find an agent and see what the hell they are up to. Basically counterintelligence by being so ham-fisted, visible and bungling that everything sticks. So Archer, who, it is worth pointing out, is not the world's greatest spy, or even greatest secret agent. He is the world's most dangerous secret agent. Archer, here is a gigantic spy award for being the most dangerous secret agent 4 years running. No one's ever made it past their first. We're considering giving up on the whole ceremony and just mailing you these things until you're dead. I've said for years that Archer is the perfect espionage weapon. Whenever you have a mission in an area, pick a secondary, near impossible objective, and assign it to Archer and his team. 80% of the time Archer will fail to accomplish the mission but create so much collateral damage that the enemy will be perfectly focused on the Archer-pocalypse and will be completely oblivious to the actual covert mission. The other 20% of the time? Archer actually pulls it off, and it's a 2-for-1, with the added bonus of Archer pulling off the impossible in the second mission. James Bond is the distraction while others do the real sabotage/spy work in the background. This is pretty much canon. In the first 15 minutes of every Bond movie he arrives on scene and the first thing he does is hook up with a local intelligence agent who gives him a crapload of info on what's going down. Bond's job is basically to physically deal with material, not to gather intel. So sometimes he blows crap up, sometimes he steals files that can't be accessed via networks, sometimes he escorts people to safety, and sometimes he caps a mother effer. But the second scene in any Bond film after the opening Bond flirts with the girl scene is someone else handing him a stack of info about his target. So basically put, Bond is not actually a spy. Bond is more like a black ops agent or elite special forces of some sort. There are different types of spies. For example, The CIA's most elite known group is Special Activities Division, SAD. It's divided into two groups: Political Action Group, SAD-POG. These are your gunless deep cover sorts who undermine your government from the inside, over the course of decades. Then they have Special Operations Group, SAD-SOG. This is where CIA poaches Navy SEALs and Green Berets that can pass as regular civilians, the ones that don't look like Jocko Willink, dress them in a suit, send them into high-stakes poker games, kill someone important, and exfil themselves out of a hostile country on foot for a month of crawling through the impassable terrain. Bond is an MI6 equivalent to SAD-SOG, with the added glamour of being posh and British, and the post-World War II characterization of the big bad living in Berlin or Moscow or Hong Kong, instead of modern bad guys living in like crafty cave in Kyrgyzstan, or Wall Street. Point is, there probably are James Bond-type super spies, but instead of arriving first class on a Concorde, and exfil via Grand Theft yacht, they infiltrate Tehran strapped to the underside of a pickup truck, and exfil by crawling all the way to the Persian Gulf. Slightly less glamorous. Edit. Oh, also I completely forgot to talk about my headcanon for Bond movies. Try it out, it's fun. So, having a big distraction like Bond is actually a great thing, and having your SAD-SOG badass be that distraction totally makes sense. Because it's dangerous. Next time you watch a Bond movie, before Bond walks into a hotel lobby and loudly announces his presence via gestures broadly to everything about Bond, picture your SAD-POG types arriving 30 minutes earlier and sitting at the bar, or taking a nap in a chair while they wait for their room to be cleaned. Bond walks in, and every enemy spy in the lobby turns to look and listen to him. And every covert MI6 agent is watching for who is watching Bond, and how much attention they're paying to him. Bond revealed himself. Most enemy agents just revealed themselves by watching him. It's dangerous because of the follow-up scene where the henchmen follow Bond into the stairwell and try to kill him, and Bond's covert team sit in the lobby and hope he survives, because they can't reveal themselves or make contact, even though they know he's in trouble. Pick some random background actors, and give them arbitrary allegiances. That one is CIA, that one is MI6, that one is Spectre, that one is KGB, etc. I am 100% doing this when watching Bond movies now. I'm imagining a true modern Bond now, sitting in a tuxedo in a cave in Kandahar, with like a crafty fake beard, playing Guess the Age of the Goat with some Taliban emir. Bond's a wet boy. The OO part of 007 stands for License to Kill. He's not a spy, he's an assassin for the Secret Service. One hell of a plumber. Exactly. He's not a spy. He's a fixer. His job is wet work. Edit. Web link. Somebody should make movies about those guys, that can be seamlessly spliced into the existing 007 movies and tell the real story as it were. I like the theory that Bond is a crap spy on purpose as a distraction from all the real spying going on. That information should have stayed in the cone of silence. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but a mentor who definitely wasn't supposed to tell me used to be a white hat for the FBI. Apparently, all he did was search for pedophiles by tracking child pornography. He said he didn't stay for very long because it was messing with his mentality. Edit. If you guys were wondering, he left to join the Navy. Became a nuke M, but they pulled him out of the program because of his cybersecurity skills, and before I left our command, he was helping our CMC connecting his computer to a projector. Sorry to put you on the spotlight, EM1. My college roommate was trying to get into the FBI/CIA and she ended up with a job offer. She's the one person I know who could actually work for the FBI/CIA. She would wake up at 4 a.m. for a 15-plus-mile run alone. She would choose to not eat after 8 p.m. to work on her self-control. She got all homework and stuff done before 5 p.m. every day and would study for her 2 language classes on the weekend. She was crazy diligent and had no social media. She never wanted to be photographed either. My brother is big into IT crap and scrubbed himself off the internet somehow and showed her how to do it. My aunt has been an FBI agent for 25 years. The only thing I know about her job is that she's an office administrator. But her information went public somehow when she was part of the team that investigated the Mandalay Bay shooting in Las Vegas. Someone found the name and address of most of the agents that worked that scene and put it up online. Not sure why. She also took me and my family on a tour of the Las Vegas FBI headquarters about 15 years ago. One thing interesting that I remember about the building is that all the doors were floor-to-ceiling 9-foot doors. Thought that was weird. All the doors were floor-to-ceiling 9-foot doors. Existence of reptiloidians confirmed. Worked with a woman who was former NSA. We would always beg her to tell us crap, but she never did. The one thing she did say, though, was that during training they show them a video of a bunch of things they found out about and stopped. She said she hardly slept for 2 weeks after watching that. I have a relative that retired from the NSA a few years ago. She has talked about a few things in generalities, nothing specific. Among them, you will see things that entirely change your view of the world. People go in there all the time with lofty goals of changing things, and within months, those goals are mostly gone. Still, if you want to change things, you work for the agency. If you just want to make money, you work for a contractor. No one cares what contractors have to say. Most people that stay long enough will do a tour in counterterrorism. Many people transfer out after a few months, and the average stay is 2 years because of the visuals. Those who stick around for a long time often change for the worse, and many struggle with mental illnesses, become alcoholics, get divorced, and generally lead miserable lives with their work their only reason for continuing. Alcoholism in general is rife in the agency. When you cannot speak to anyone outside the agency about your work, it becomes nearly impossible to confide in anyone close to you. Even if you have close work friends or family, you have to be careful what you say because not everyone is read into every program. 2 people can sit next to each other in the same office, working on the same subject for months, and never talk about it with each other even though they're close friends outside the agency. So people turn to the bottle. Her husband worked for a different government agency and also had a top-secret SCI clearance, but she couldn't talk about her work with him, nor could he with her, but his didn't involve the intelligence community. The agency employs psychiatrists who are cleared to be read into almost any program. Going to them, though, is often seen as a mark of shame among other agency employees, so they are not used nearly as often as they should be. She told me most of these things while trying to recruit me. She believed that I should go in knowing what to expect. I eventually declined to apply. That is really a shame that the stigma is still there for psychological help. Are we still too proud to acknowledge that seeing the kind of crap they do has a serious toll on their mental health? Yes. Same thing in the military. Which is weird. I feel like it takes greater personal strength to maintain proper personal health than to let it degrade, and far greater strength to recognize, admit to, and seek help for issues. Like, if somebody who moves boxes in a warehouse or something feels their back aching chronically to the point where they have to drink to dull the pain, and proceeds refuse to even get it checked, are they cooler than the guy who wears a brace and regularly goes to their free physical checkups that the company offers? Doesn't that just make them dumb and negligent? My aunt worked at the NSA, too. She never told us what she did. If anything, it was just about her coworkers. She convinced one to leave her abusive husband. Even if you wanted to get a job there, asking her what jobs they had was like trying to pull a tooth. She'd just say that any job outside of the NSA was in the NSA as well. As far as I know, she worked with foreign language stuff, because she's a bit of a polyglot. Probably examples of what they prevented, etc., showing that while much of the work is thankless and boring, it's worth it when you finally catch some dickheads with plutonium or something. I'm thinking of the scene with all the newspaper articles on the wall in Kingsman. But for real. That's exactly it. I can only imagine how many failed or prevented attempts there must have been. No, various plots the NSA had apparently stopped. What kind of things? Did she elaborate at all? Brian Bendis, creator of Miles Morales, author of House of M, etc., has a story about doing a talk at GBCI at Langley and being told to wait in a break room, not allowed to have his laptop, phone, his own notebook or pen, but was supplied with a notebook when he walked in that'd be reviewed when he left. A young analyst walks in for coffee, sees him sitting there, recognized him as famous comic book author Brian Michael Bendis, and starts to react like a fan. He then pauses, starts sweating, and quietly asks Bendis if this is a test of some kind. and quietly asks Bendis if this is a test of some kind. I love this. What a mind-bending experience it must be to work in a place like that where you need to worry about tests constantly. Operation Ivy Bells was a plan to tap Soviet communication lines. The cover story they used was that they had divers diving down to recover fragments of a new Soviet supersonic anti-ship missile. The communication line tap was a failure due to a spy. However, the dive team successfully recovered all fragments of the missiles from the Soviet weapons tests. The US was able to reverse engineer one and subsequently learned they were radar-guided only and the assumed IR guidance did not exist. Minor clarification. The tap was successful, and recordings were recovered by dive teams over many months. The tap was ultimately discovered by the Soviets because of information provided to them by Ronald Pelton, the spy you mentioned. The book Red November has a pretty good write-up on the Ivy Bell missions. The cover story they used was that they had divers diving down to recover fragments of a new Soviet supersonic anti-ship missile. I'm a bit confused. Wouldn't the Soviets be just as alarmed by the cover story? Edit: I got it after about the 10th time it was explained, guys. Well, it might be alarming. But it's also an extremely believable lie for the Russians to cover up tapping communications. I'd assume studying baby seals may toss up more questions. Yeah, you'd like to know what accounts belong to FBI/CIA agents, wouldn't you? Yes. You are on our watch list, buckaroo. Of course, please don't assassinate me. I'm not one, but my friend is. She went off the grid after she graduated college, got recruited by the CIA. She told us she was interested and majored in political science. I hope she's doing well. I'm still here, old friend. I just watch you guys from a satellite telescope. Like what you did with the hair. So, how do the lasers get up there? Amazon Prime. They got good rockets. Turns out, the Amish. It's a real Wakanda situation, the Amish. I once rented out my old farmhouse to a family. They paid the rent every month, and other than not mowing the lawn to save their life, I didn't think anything bad about them. That all changed when the DEA called me to inform me that my renter had been murdered in Mexico and was asking my permission to search the property. Well, it turns out I had unknowingly rented my house to the Mexican mob and they were using it as safe house. It all fell apart for them when 2 of them got caught with a duffel bag full of meth. My renter had to go back to Mexico to visit his mother and was promptly murdered. Let's just say I no longer am a landlord and never will be again. You didn't bother to ask if he worked for a Mexican cartel. Geez, dude. He had a strict don't ask cartel policy. You'd think they'd hire someone for a few bucks rather than call attention to themselves. That's how the Hells Angels work. My friend's uncle ended having a member move in next door. One Wednesday, his new neighbor knocks at the door and mentions he's have a barbecue party on Saturday with 20 or so people and admits it will be a little loud, but he'll have it quiet by 10:30. Sure enough, at 10, the music stops and by 10:30 everyone is inside. During the party, people were leaning on the fence and it fell over. It was already rotten. The next morning, the neighbor pops by and says to not worry about the fence, he'll get it fixed. Monday, the next day, a work crew shows up and replaces the whole fence, about 120, by supper time. If you're a criminal, be nice to your neighbors. My parents once told me that Vegas in the 60s was much safer because the mob was in control. 2 family stories, even though this will probably get buried. 1. My father's uncle told everyone for his entire life that he worked at a button factory. It was only revealed after his death that he, in fact, worked at a missile factory and assembled the gyroscopes for the guidance in missiles. 2. We always knew my grandfather worked for the government at the Pentagon. We never knew exactly what he did, but every 6 months or so he would call up to talk to my mom. The conversation was pretty much always the same. My mom and grandfather would catch up for a few, then it would turn into, "So I have another clearance upgrade coming up, you will probably get a call like always. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Surer than crap, a week later some government agency would call up, it was always a different one, and ask for my mom. They would ask a bunch of questions and that would be that. When he died from Alzheimer's, at his funeral, 4 men in black suits attended and no one knew who they were. After the burial, they approached his widow and handed her a plaque with 17 government agency symbols on it. Turns out, he was responsible for interagency cooperation and training. He basically got everyone to talk to and teach each other. Now his son works for them, doing what? We don't know and don't ask. Button Factory. That's a hilariously awesome cover. My great-uncle told us late in his life that he didn't work for GE as an engineer his whole career. He actually worked for the CIA and that's all he would say. Edit. Since y'all up in my business, my great-uncle was a very Christian man. I doubt he was lying or suffering from dementia. That said, I was young when he died and fuzzy on the details. Also sounds like a top-tier uncle-style trolling maneuver lol. If I make it to an old age and have young nieces/nephews, I'm totally telling only one of them that I work for the CIA. I just saw a post about how a man's dying wish was to troll people to thinking he was a spy. So at his funeral they hired 3 blacked-out SUV filled with actors to stand stoically at the funeral to confuse the hell out of people. Honestly, I'm in. That sounds dope. That's money worth spending. Similar story with my grandpa, and we all called bullcrap, but when he died and we went through his office we were all like, oh crap guys, I think grandpa was telling the truth. Not CIA but have worked with and know guys in intelligence. Most of the intelligence we get is from OSINT, open source intel. I.e. news articles, press releases, news networks and government announcements. Most people think that everyone in intelligence is some James Bond/Jason Bourne type of individual when in reality, the majority of analysts sit at a desk and go through news articles all day. That said, that's not the only method we have to gather intel, but it is where most of it comes from. Even analysts that are using other methods such as GeoInt, IMINT and SIGINT spend their day cropping images for minute details or replaying and monitoring the same signal over and over again. Want to work for them? Prepare to do a fair amount of paperwork. The form will ask for each of your employer contact information of friends, your history of addresses, etc. They will then send an agent to interview a number of these people. Next, you have to take a psychological exam and interviewed by a psychologist. Finally, you'll have one last interview with a polygraph and a professional lie detector. Polygraph and a professional lie detector. Aren't they considered not completely reliable, though? I talked with some CIA recruiters towards the end of college and almost applied earnestly after a large group Q&A and then a much smaller one. The thing that stuck out to me was that the guys said most CIA agents are out of shape and have limited combat training with guns or hand-to-hand. They made it clear that it's the military that uses force. If confronted, they were trained to immediately surrender, or to drop their bags and run if possible. Fun fact, the I stands for intelligence, not incredibly deadly person. My sister is an intelligence officer who was assigned to a Special Forces FOB in Afghanistan for a period. She had to go through a gun qualification course and failed. This meant that she was not allowed to carry a firearm while deployed. The instructor told her she was one of a very select group so bad at shooting that they could not pass and then jokingly gave her a knife to carry. She spent the deployment doing whatever she does, some sort of analysis, and then hanging out around the gym so she could watch buff Special Forces guys lift. Ha ha ha, this is hilarious to imagine instead of stereotypical CIA agent. I'm not sure why this would be surprising. From my contact with the CIA, FBI recruiters, the job is mostly ho/hum. You still get to do cool stuff, but it's also still a 9-to-5 job. Basically, it's more office space and less James Bond. What they don't show in the Bond movies is all the paperwork he has to do when he gets back to his office. I remember an early episode of Jack Ryan was basically him arguing about getting to do all the badass stuff and not having a desk job. But reassigning me would compromise plot development. And my high-rated comment had the wrong actor. Corrected to Jack Ryan. I mean, I'll admit I wouldn't have kept watching if it was The Office, Langley edition. I feel like an intelligence version of The Office would be hilarious, but that's probably because I work in international affairs. I mean, there is Archer. Where is that report on that group in East Sudan? Oh right, Becky is out this week. So I guess all of effing Africa can go to hell until she gets back. I'm sure it's fine. CIA does have a special forces unit though, recruited from ex-Delta Force and SEALs. Human intelligence collectors are not special forces combat Jason Bourne movie superheroes. They're people who are more likely to have majored in psychology than they are to have trained in or listened to Wu-Tang. Am I on the list? A harmless question. You can FOIA your FBI dossier to find out, though that definitely puts you on another list. Considering that, FOIA request would be the most interesting thing I've done such an agency would care about. I'll be okay. It would be comforting knowing that the world is so safe that they have to harass someone who has never done anything more illegal than smoke pot or driving 75 in a 70. Most people don't even have a file with the FBI. I've done this. It was really disappointing. A single piece of paper, with my name, addresses lived, places of employment, and known group memberships. Whoever put it together had a sense of humor, though. After noting my association with Discordianism, there was a FNORD snuck in there. My conclusion is that the people who work for government agencies are the same kind of nerds I'm friends with. A college professor of mine, who was a founding member of SDS and therefore had a deep dossier, did this and it took something like 4 years to receive. If I recall correctly, there was basically a dozen legible words and the other 100 pages was blacked out. He did see that they had strange things like his childhood allergies listed in there. If I can trust that she's telling the truth, there's an old lady in town who was in the FBI back in 50s/60s. She said Nikita Khrushchev was a short man. Nice try, Vladimir. Edit. Thanks for the awards, you kind people. Glad I gave you all a good laugh. Folded hands. This could have benefited from a serious tag. You thought the true guys would have replied. If it had the serious tag, they had to. It's the law. CIA have different specialists, like any government branch. Field agents, paper pushers, targeting officers, programs and plans officers, paramilitary officers, language officers, information resource officers. The list goes on. I'm available if you're looking for a middle-aged bullcrap artist. If you apply for a job at GCHQ MI5 MI6/Filingdale/ etc., they will talk to every member of your close family, and if any minor red flags come up, you might not get the job. And also if you are Chinese/Russian/North Korean/etc. I think that it probably goes to a grandparent or great-grandparent being from that country. You will not even be able to apply. Source: Stepdad was in MI6, and fun fact, if he wants to go to certain countries, for example Israel, he has to ask permission from the mod to travel there. I used to subscribe to an Asian American lifestyle/beauty mag, and every month the CIA ran ads about putting your heritage to use. Not either of these, but I've had a clearance so I can weigh in a little. Two things. Firstly, most secret crap happens right in front of people's faces under the guise of being normal everyday stuff. Secondly, properly secret programs and operations are never named in any way that indicates what they actually are about. They're generally just two words chosen at random, and that would rarely come up in normal conversation, stuff like crack gorilla, which I just made up off the top of my head. So when people talk about classified stuff and its name is super topical, it's either very very old, or a nickname at best. Only public programs and operations have topical names as a PR motive, like Desert Storm. Operation Crack Gorilla. I was told that would never see the light of day. Damn you, user Scalablicense. Reddit link. Just so you people know, there will be a case file opened in order to investigate and document this Reddit post. If that's true, then they have to catalog this comment. Dick and balls. Ha. Got me. Don't tell anyone, but we spy on people sometimes. Maybe off topic. I had dinner with a bunch of pasty white overweight dudes interested in hiring us for some AI consulting. We knew they worked for the Defense Department, maybe Defense Intelligence Agency, but they couldn't tell us exactly who they worked for or what exactly they needed. At least not until we had clearance. At some point in the conversation, I asked the one buff-looking guy if he ever served in the military. He said he was a Navy SEAL. I looked at the other dorky-looking dudes and asked them one at a time. They were all former Special Forces guys. I mean, you would never ever think any of these guys were Special Forces. They looked like regular IT guys. I don't know for sure, but my guess is that they were all CIA. I've known a couple of SEALs and an Army Ranger. None of them was built like The Rock or Terry Crews. The body composition and type of fitness needed to do their job is more akin to that of an Ironman triathlete than a bodybuilder is. One of the SEALs told me that having excess muscle is actually a disadvantage because they'd have to walk, run, and swim all that additional mass. It's also hard to maintain a lot of bulk with their deployment and operational tempo. They've all been very modest and unassuming people. You wouldn't peg them as operators upon meeting them. Related, I was in the sauna at my gym when this naked old man with extremely long testicles started talking to me. Somehow, the conversation ended up on the topic of my new roommate, who happened to be Saudi Arabian. He then proceeded to tell me he worked for the FBI and knew exactly who I was and asked if I would like to make some money, every now and then, for giving him information. I said sure, not because my roommate was sketchy, but because he got drunk one day and pissed on my couch. This was 10 or so years ago and I never really heard from him, but I think my phone was tapped for a short span of time. Upvote for long testicles. I honestly stopped reading after that because I couldn't stop picturing them. You okay now? You should go finish the story. There's a twist. There's a twist in his long testicles? Ew. My dad always told me about how he went to school with one of the members of the Saudi royal family. Apparently, a couple of dudes played a prank on him which ended up with him being publicly humiliated. Especially Saudi men are extremely proud. I guess he took it really bad. He ended up having to leave the country. Anyways, long story short, a few years down the road the two pranksters both died in freak accidents. One was allegedly killed during an attempted mugging. The other was found dead in the bottom of his pool. Both happened within the span of a couple weeks. Holy yikes, Batman. Part of the pride has to do with the culture. Many Eastern cultures have an honor/shame system. Many Western cultures have a guilt/innocence system. So for an American, the bad part about something like getting a speeding ticket is that you broke the law and got punished for it. You'd feel guilty. For an Easterner, the bad part about a ticket is that you brought dishonor on your family by being a subpar citizen. You'd feel ashamed. I don't think it's an inferior culture or that their version of pride is the same as Western pride. I'm oversimplifying it here. I grew up in one Western culture and one Eastern one for parts of my life, so if anyone is more familiar with these concepts, feel free to correct me or give better examples. Anyway, that public humiliation was a huge offense to the Saudi man's honor. Not in the way that American men have their pride hurt. In a deeper, more complete way. This guy might also have been stuck up in general, but his culture of honor likely made a big difference in the way the humiliation was perceived. All that said, death was nowhere close to an equal act of retaliation. It was not justifiable by any measure. I escaped from a cult led by a Middle Eastern leader, and can confirm that the above description is spot on. He actively hunted me for over 15 years because of the shame I brought to his international reputation by being the first, and thus, at the time, the only, girl to escape, ever. And in a cheerful side note, I learned recently that his wives and 42 of his children have now fled the cult. I didn't learn if anyone was left, but I'm thrilled to learn that most of him or her seem to be successfully escaping, albeit a lifetime after I ran. Edited to add, if you are reading this and you are in a cult and need to get out, or you are being held against your will and need help, please reach out. There are many of us who will help. Yeah, that's a big part of what my dad would always talk about when he told the story. You said it much more eloquently than I could have. My dad was semi-kind of friends with him. He always felt really bad about how he felt he had to leave school. As you said, I don't think his classmates saw it in the same way that he did. I think being the victim of a prank would be a matter of feeling that it had been proven that he had no power or influence. Victims of crimes often feel ashamed and humiliated when the crime is very personal, as in sexual assault. The humiliation and shame is even worse. Lol, I really hope this is true. How much did you get paid? A sack's worth. I have a few friends that are CIA officers. First thing is that the people that work for the CIA are not CIA agents, they are officers. The people they recruit to spy for them are agents. Also, going on a tangent, I am 90% sure I have been one of those agents when I was dealing with a Mexican logistics company while working at General Motors. The logistics company we were dealing with was owned by a multi-billion-dollar Mexican clan, and all the ultra-wealthy clans in Mexico all have ties to various cartels. So some federal agencies got involved. Mainly FBI and I believe a few DEA, but one guy was specifically not wearing any badges, was not willing to identify what agency he was working for, and questioned me on a lot of specific details of what the company's capabilities were. Though getting back on track, anyone who is a US citizen can apply to join the CIA, it isn't that hard. If you have any kind of degree in computer science, statistics, engineering, or accounting and don't have anything that would F up you getting a clearance, getting a job would be relatively easy there. And as implied with that previous comment, working at the CIA is far more boring than you would think. Lots of tracing manufacturing capabilities, from what I described with that Mexican logistics company to finding out how China sources the components they use to manufacture their satellites. Intelligence work is really boring most of the time. Most of the job is agents talking about looking forward to retirement, time-waster trainings, whining about the crafty new guys, how the job has changed, shady hiring practices, new policies designed to maximize agent liability while letting the old skirt chasers retire with BS lifetime achievement awards, and wondering how the Sam hell the current agency admins got to be in charge. By the time you finally get that amazing career case, the passion, skill, and dedication you have when you started out is long gone because the agency doesn't really care about you or any of the other cogs. The U.S. Attorney's Office isn't interested in anything they can't win without absolute certainty. Update. 2 other people agreed with me, and I apparently agreed with me as well. This is more support than you will ever get from your admins as a federal agent. We have full access to Google's ad network. If we really want to track someone, we use that. Not a federal agent, but like come on, there's literally an API in the source code for it, and you think it's not being used? Was having your butthole upgraded one of the job perks? Everyone knows Reddit is full of government agents with high security clearance just waiting to endow us with their secrets. Not an FBI agent myself, but I recently was in frequent contact with an FBI recruiter about open positions I was considering, and what they told me was, the process of actually becoming an FBI employee usually takes between 1 to 2 years for all the necessary background checks and training/exams. The FBI does all the stuff you see in the movies, just not as quickly. As I was watching some X-Files the night before, the recruiter told me that you can imagine that spooked me a bit. Special agents aren't spies, they're cops, which is ultimately why I didn't decide to go forward with the application, since the initial info session made it seem like special agents had more of a foreign/diplomatic role than they do, which is what drew me in the first place. This was a test. You've all failed your security checkup. Turn in your badges and your guns. The plastic tips at the ends of shoelaces are called aglets. Their true purpose is sinister. I only know this word and what it means because of a Phineas and Ferb episode. Their true purpose is sinister only on one shoe. The others have a very Dexter purpose. I saw this episode of Justice League Unlimited last night, haha. When Question is being interrogated by Lex Luthor, this is one of the things he says. In the 80s/90s, with marginal seismometers and a little computing power, people in Australia tracked nuclear explosions. That's the cover story. Think about what people with today's seismometers and supercomputers can do. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, Please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.